Today, we are unpacking one of the biggest, most unbelievable scandals in Silicon Valley history. Seriously, it is a wild story of ambition, of outright fraud, and a lie that cost billions of dollars. But this is so much more than just a story about a failed company. It's about what happens when medical innovation goes terribly wrong, and how that one company's downfall is changing the rules for all of us. Right now, let's get into it.
I mean, really think about that. What if a simple blood test told you were miscarrying when you weren't, or that you might have cancer when you were perfectly healthy? This isn't some plot from a horror movie. This is exactly what happened to real people. This is the human cost of a promise that was, from the very beginning, built on a lie.
You better believe this scandal sent shockwaves, not just through Silicon Valley, but all the way to Washington, D.C. It has forced this huge national debate about how we regulate our medical tests. And the central question is a tough one. How do you protect patients without totally crushing the next big breakthrough?
All right, so let's start right there with that fight. Because to really get the Theranos effect, you first have to understand what the world of medical testing looks like today. So, just this year, on April 29th, 2024, the FDA made a really bold move. They rolled out these strict new regulations for a whole category of medical tests. And, you guessed it, it's shaking up the entire industry. To understand why they're doing this now, we've got to go back to the story of that one spectacular failure. So the tests at the very heart of this are called lab-developed tests, or LDTs for short. The easiest way to think of them is like custom-made tests. They are created and used by just a single lab. Now, they started out as pretty simple tools, for rare diseases, but as technology got way more advanced, so did they. Pretty soon, LDTs were being used for huge conditions like cancer, all without the really strict government oversight that other tests have to go through. See, for years, medical tests have had two totally different paths to get to you. On one side, you've got the official FDA-approved tests. They go through a super tough, rigorous process. But on the other side, you had these LDTs, which were basically operating in a kind of regulatory Wild West. This new FDA rule, it's a huge attempt to close that loophole, to get rid of the dangerous shortcut that allowed companies like Theranos to put patients directly at risk. Okay, now let's get to the story at the center of all this. It's a story so powerful, so compelling, it convinced some of the smartest and most powerful people on the planet to bet billions of dollars on a complete lie. This was it. This was the revolutionary promise from Elizabeth Holmes. At just 19 years old, she drops out of Stanford to found Theranos, and she promised to completely reinvent healthcare. Her vision was so simple, and man, it was powerful. No more big, scary needles, no more waiting days for the lab, just one single drop of blood. And the world absolutely bought it, hook, line, and sinker. At its peak in 2014, Theranos was valued at a staggering $9 billion. This made Holmes, who was then just 30, the world's youngest self-made female billionaire. The hype was completely off the charts. Holmes was a master of illusion. She built this whole image as the next Steve Jobs, right down to the signature black turtleneck. She surrounded herself with a star-studded board of political titans, which gave her this incredible air of legitimacy. She was striking deals with huge retailers like Walgreens and Safeway, and she convinced some of the world's richest people to pour money into her company. She was selling a story, and for a very long time, everybody believed it. There was just one tiny little problem. The story was a complete fabrication. Yep, behind all the slick marketing and the powerful board members, the technology, well, it just didn't work at all. It was exactly like the Wizard of Oz, this powerful, impressive image with absolutely nothing real behind the curtain. The Edison machine, their so-called revolutionary device, was a total disaster. It failed more often than it worked. So what did they do? To produce results, they were secretly using standard, off-the-shelf machines from their competitors. And when it came time to show off their amazing tech to investors or the military, or even the Vice President of the United States, they faked the whole thing. So how in the world did they pull this off? Well, court documents laid out their playbook for deception, and it's pretty wild. First, they'd use a special app that was designed to just hide any error messages from popping up. Then, they'd run what they called a null protocol. Basically, the machine would make all the right noises and the lights would blink, but it wasn't actually analyzing anything. And if they really needed actual results, they'd just secretly send the sample to a lab down the hall and run it on their competitors' machines. It was a carefully planned lie from top to bottom. But a lie that big can't last forever.
Eventually, the truth started to leak out, and it was all thanks to a few incredibly brave employees who risked absolutely everything to expose it.
The beginning of the end actually came from inside the company. In 2013, this young employee named Tyler Shultz realized that the company was straight up manipulating data to hide how badly the Edison machine was failing. When his warnings were completely ignored, he resigned. Then he secretly contacted a Wall Street Journal reporter named John Carreyrou. That one tip led to a bombshell expose in 2015 that started a chain reaction and ultimately brought the whole house of cards crashing down. What makes Tyler Shultz's story so incredible is who he was. His grandfather was George Shultz, the former Secretary of State and a deeply respected member of the Theranos board. By speaking out, Tyler was forced to confront his own family and risk his relationship with a grandfather he loved and admired. It was a choice that came with huge personal and professional costs. So what happened after the truth finally came out? Well, the fallout was fast and it was furious. It led to criminal charges, long prison sentences, and a national reckoning that we are still dealing with today.
And we have to remember, this was so much more than just a financial scam. The lies had devastating consequences for real people. Court documents revealed story after story of patients getting these life-altering and completely wrong results. A woman who had already tragically suffered multiple miscarriages was told she was losing another baby. The test was wrong. Her pregnancy was perfectly fine, and she later had a healthy child. This is the true cost of Theranos' deception.
For her central role in this massive fraud, founder and CEO Elizabeth Holmes was found guilty of wire fraud and conspiracy. She was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in federal prison. Her partner and the company's president, Sunny Balwani, was convicted on all 12 fraud counts that were brought against him. He got an even longer sentence, 12 years and 11 months.
And this brings us right back to where we started. The whole Theranos saga became the FDA's Exhibit A for why the old rules just weren't good enough anymore. A charismatic founder had exploited a regulatory loophole, she'd raised almost $1 billion, and she put patient lives at risk, all without a product that even worked. It was a failure so catastrophic, it demanded a response.
And so, at the end of the day, we're left with this really fundamental question. How do we encourage innovation without sacrificing patient safety? Tighter regulations might prevent the next Theranos, sure, but could they also stifle the next genuine medical breakthrough? It's a debate with no easy answers, and whatever the outcome is, it's going to affect all of us.